Hey, good Saturday evening, everybody. I hope y'all are doing good today. Let me say hi, Mr. Brian Barber. I hope you're having a good evening, man. Glad to meet you. Miss Kim Burris, good to see you again as always. Joanne, always a pleasure. You know who it is. Bobby done showed up. Okay. Well, we'll just do that, Bobby. Bobby says he needs prayers for his mother. She's not doing good. She's been sick for 3 weeks now. Y'all try to remember that and keep her in your prayers. Waylon's not on yet. He will be here after a while, or he might be here after a while. He's got some other things to do tonight. We come on Saturday night to make sure that we had plenty of time for my guest tonight. I'm going to put this out there. There may be some graphic or some intense subjects talked about tonight. So, guys, use your viewers' discretion tonight. But I cannot wait to have this gentleman on the show. I've been looking forward to it for weeks now. Anyways, guys, here is the man. I mean, the only man, Old Bear. There he is. Not good enough.
Way over the top, my friend. Way over the top.
Build him up. Build him up. Pressure, baby. Ain't no pressure. No worries.
Uh-huh. I hear
So
you.
how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, buddy.
No, outstanding. All right, guys. Old Bear has got his own channel, and he's just been gracious enough to come over here and spend some time with us tonight. I'm going to put this up right off the bat. If you don't know who Old Bear is, just go ahead and subscribe to him at Old Bear's Den of Bigfoot. You won't regret it, none at all. I've been watching a few of them myself, and it's hard to stay up my little old brain. But anyways, if you want to, we're asking you to go over and check this man out. He's got some good stuff. I'm telling you. All right. Let's see here. All right. You ready?
Anytime you are, buddy.
All right. You know just as well as I do, it always starts out at the beginning. So if you don't mind, take off on when your first experience. Well, let's put it this way. Yeah, your first experience. Let's just run off with that one.
Okay. Back when I was 16 years old, I was in high school, and here in the state of West Virginia, you can't have a hunting license until you're 16, a hunting and fishing license. Um, so that year, mom and dad bought me a new fishing license for my birthday and a hunting license, and gave me an extra buck tag and doe permits and all that stuff. You know, they filled it up, and I bow hunted all. Back then, season started in October. You could start squirrel hunting a week early before bow season started. We were hunting in a one place out in Work County, West Virginia, and it was Pulp and Paper Company, and you could just go and hunt. I mean, they had gates up, but they never locked the gates and never shut them. You know, it was just open to the general public, and that's the way it was set up because of the state. You know, there's so much area to hunt in the state of West Virginia since we're almost 3/4 forested, and we got some steep hills here. We call them mountains, but they're older than the Rockies. You know, they're been around a lot longer and they're worn down some. They're not like doing 10, 12,000, 14,000 feet in the air, which I've done. I've been to the Rockies. And, but anyway, I was 16 years old, and I had bugged my dad for all of bow season to go by myself. And he said, no, you know, I think you're still too young. And I'm like, Dad, I'm bigger than you. And by this point, I'm 2 or 3 inches taller than my dad. I'm broader shouldered. And I knew how to gut a deer because I've gutted them before. And I knew what you had to do to take care of the animal. And all bow season, I had to hunt with him. You know, and I had an older brother with us. He was, he was home. Uh, Him and his wife, and he was hunting with us. And well, our deer season starts the week of Thanksgiving, and I talked him into letting me go with my uncle. Well, my uncle gave me the permission that Dad wouldn't give me. He said, "You can go. You're big enough. You can go by yourself. You don't need somebody to hold your hand." And I got by with it until Thanksgiving Day, and that's when Dad went. So I ended
No.
up hunting with Dad, which I'm not. I loved hunting with my dad because my dad was my hero from
Mm.
the time I was big enough to walk and try to keep up with him. And I loved hunting with my dad. Um,
But
it
you was
was a
wanting to
lot of
prove
fun.
yourself, wasn't you?
Yeah, I was trying to prove myself. I'm a big boy. I
Yeah.
played football and I did all that stuff, and I was pretty tough uh, because I was told. My dad told me, he said, "Men are tough." You know,
Mm-hmm.
he said, "If you play football, you break a finger, you just put it back in place and go play."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. So, you know, we fast forward to the last day of deer season, rifle season here in West Virginia. It's in the middle 60s. My dad had to work. Well, he ran a route, and once he got done with his route, he came home and he looked at me and he said, "It's just too hot to go deer hunting." And here I am standing there with my camo pants on, a red flannel shirt. I've got everything in the truck except for the food box and the cooler. And I was picking it up, going to take it down the steps to the back of the K5 Blazer we had. And he saw me, he saw me and he said, "I don't think we're going to go hunting. You can take that back to the house." So I did what my dad said, took it back to the house, and I was going to go down and get the rest of the stuff out. And he made it into the bedroom to change clothes. And my 5 foot tall mom um, walked in and had a short conversation, one sided conversation with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And it pretty much went, "You're taking him hunting. He's been up since 5 o'clock after you left. You're taking that boy hunting." And he come back out of the bedroom and he was in his camo pants and had a shirt on. He said, "Mom's fixing me something to eat real quick. And after I eat, we'll go." "Okay, Dad." So we leave 12 o'clock, 12:15, something like that. And it's a 2 hour drive.
Hmm.
So we get out there a little bit after two where we're going to go. And he parks and he says, "There ain't nobody else out here hunting, so I'm going to let you go by yourself." Well, I jump bail out of the truck. I run around the back, roll the window down, drop tailgate, grab my rifle, my 30-30, Winchester rifle, and I'm shucking shells in it as fast as I can before he changes his mind. And I throw my vest on and I put a shell in the chamber and I put the hammer back to where it's on, at half cock. It's a safety mechanism.
Yeah.
And I put that eighth round into the tube. So I walk, I guess it's a mile back out the road where I wanted to go. And I knew Dad wouldn't walk out there. And he told me, "So if you kill one, just take care of it, bring it up to the road, and we'll pick it up on the way out." All right. I got a habit. I'm sorry. I
I do
apologize.
too. We've discussed it.
Yeah.
I do too.
And he he went towards the end of the ridge, and I went back to where the ridge started. And I know there's one spot I love to go there because the deer can't see you until they come out from behind this big, huge boulder. It's over 7 foot tall, and they cannot see around it because of where it's at. And if you sit closer to it, you're hidden until they come out. And I'd shot a deer there the year before. That deer never knew I was there.
Yeah.
And so I walked out there and I got close to the boulder and I was sitting there and it's about 2:30
Mm-hmm.
and I'm there probably 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes at the most. And then I hear some deer running and they come flying out from the bottom side of that boulder. And it's three big does and they're running. You know, I mean, they got their tongues hung out, they stop and they're breathing heavy and you know, they keep looking over their shoulder, you know, they keep looking back from where they came. And I'm like, well, that's typically, you know, what does do when they're being chased by a buck deer.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And at that point, I'm like, I'm gonna get my first buck with a rifle, and you know, and that's what's going through this, you know, hairless head of mine. And I'm thinking, you know, my dad's gonna be proud of me. I wanted to make him proud. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
proud of me anyway, but you know, being with him hunting and getting your first deer it's something completely different in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there and I'm 20 feet from this boulder, from the bottom side of the boulder. I'm sitting beside a big oak tree and I've got a blaze orange vest on and a blaze orange hat on. And those deer, those does, they take off running. They're there maybe 20 seconds catching their breath and then they take off running again. And I thought, well, they must have smelled me, but they didn't blood. But they took off running, and I once they left, I could hear something back up in the hollow to the left, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's that buck coming out there. Well, the whole time I've been sitting there, there's no other sound in the woods. There's no chipmunks, no squirrels, no birds, nothing. Nothing's making any noise. There ain't even any wind blowing. And I'm sitting there and it, you know, it doesn't click in my head that maybe something's wrong or, you know, they know I'm there. It just, I'm hunting. You know, I've got in my mind there's a deer coming and I can hear footfalls. And I see, I'm looking back up in there trying to look around the boulder, which I can't. And I hear the sound get close to the boulder and I'll notice some movement over top of the boulder. I could see the top of the boulder. It's just a big piece of rock. You know, it's kind of like an ob sized. They took a dozer and shoved it over the hill, and that's where it landed.
Mm-hmm.
Many years ago, when they timbered that property, and I saw something, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just a squirrel. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's the first squirrel I've seen. I'm hearing a deer coming, and you know, I'm gonna get lucky. And at that age, it's all luck because it definitely ain't skill.
Yeah.
You know, you're always in a hyper mood. You're always moving too fast. You know, I couldn't tell you how many times my dad tell me, "Quit moving so much, or they're going to see us long before they get here."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there, and I hear it coming behind the boulder, and I raise that rifle to my shoulder, and I've got my thumb on the trigger, and I'm looking down the sights, and I'm thinking, as soon as it steps out, I'm gonna ease this hammer back, and then I'm gonna shoot this deer. Well, it's not a four-legged creature that walks out. It's a two-legged creature.
Mm-hmm.
And when it stepped out, it was taller than the boulder. Just the top, probably this much of its head was actually above the boulder. And at that point, I'm like, what in the world is this? It's hair covered. It's an auburn and brown mix, and it's leaning forward, and its knees are bent, and it's standing there, and it's breathing hard. And I'm sitting there looking at it across the open sights of this rifle, and I'm like, I don't know this creature. I've never seen him. And then something clicked in my head. And you remember the movie Boggy Creek, the
Absolutely.
Legend of Boggy Creek?
Favorite movie.
Well, I was the year before. It was after deer season. It was getting close to Christmas, and it. If you remember when we was younger, I used to have movies on Saturday night, scary movies on Saturday night.
Yep.
And then at midnight, the TV went off. I mean, that was just it. I mean, they didn't have anything else on after midnight till around 5 or 6 in the morning. And I was watching that with my dad, and it went off, and I looked at him and I said, "Dad, are those things real?" My dad looked at me and said, "No, son, they're not." And the way he said it to me, that day I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, once I got home, I sat down and I thought about it, and I'm like, Dad said that in a different way. Didn't sound like he didn't mean it. And but that's after the sighting, and I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, oh my God, they are real. And it stood there probably 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. And then it just kind of turned its upper body and looked right dead at me. At this point, I'm seeing every bit of this thing. The hair was about to here. It didn't have a big brow ridge. It just had it had big, heavy, eyebrows.
Yeah.
And it looked at me, and it is standing there for probably 10 seconds, and then it curled its lips. It pursed its lips to where it curled back, showed its teeth, and the teeth were big old yellow chiclets. They were the biggest chiclets you ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And there wasn't no canines. Well, at least I didn't see them. I mean, it didn't stick outside of its mouth. And it's standing there and it starts growling. And at that point, I'm thinking about pulling the hammer back. It takes a step. Now, its step is covering 4 or 5 feet or more. And it clicks in my head from training from my dad, my uncles, my older brother. He was in the Air Force, and, you don't lose your cool. I was taught that. I mean, it was ingrained in me. And I didn't lose my cool, but I'm starting to get a little bit anxious. And I'm thinking, do I run? Do I shoot this thing? I'm like, if it takes another step, I'm shooting it. And it starts to take a step, and I pulled that hammer back, and on them old Model 94s, they made a click sound. And, where there was no sound in the woods, it was like you let off a piece of dynamite.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it was super loud. And this thing stops mid-step, and it's growling at me. And it stopped mid-step, and then it stopped growling. It closed its mouth, and it's standing there mid-step, and it starts turning a little bit its upper body, not its head, just its upper body. Now, there's no neck on this thing that was visible. I mean, it didn't have a neck. It had muscles that come from behind its head down to its shoulders, and the typical Bigfoot. And the head wasn't conical. It was like mine is. It didn't have that conical dome to it, and it looked like it was like a human gorilla. It looked human, but it had distinctive figures. The nose was kind of squashed down, and stuff a gorilla has on its face. And I couldn't see any ears on this thing. because all the hair off the top of its head was hanging down on the sides, and you just couldn't. I didn't see the ears. It's standing there looking at me, and I just didn't see anything. And when that gun clicked, it started that thing of spinning on that one leg, kind of looking which way should I go. And it's standing there probably 10, 15, 20 seconds more. And I'm slowly applying pressure to this trigger on this rifle, and it's a 180 grain bullet at 20 feet that's going to decimate, whatever. And finally, it just it brought its foot back, and it set its foot down, and it started twisting, and it twisted its legs around and ran behind the boulder. And I'm sitting there going, and I closed my eyes and I could hear it. Back then I actually had a hearing in my left ear. Now I'm 20% diminished in my left ear. And I hear this thing run and run and run, breaking twigs, breaking sticks, running over top of small trees, making all kinds of racket. Then everything goes quiet. It just stopped. And I'm thinking in my head, well, that thing's 200 yards away. I need to get up and get out of here. So I stood up. And now, mind you, this rifle is still on full cock. The least bit of pressure on that trigger and it'll go off.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up and I went up 2 benches to get back to the gravel road that we came in on. And I hit that road, and both of my feet, I stepped on the gravel road and took another step, and it screamed at me. Now, that scream vibrated my chest, like it was going through me. And I'm like, that's it. I'm done. At this point, I'm starting to get afraid. And I start doing my best imitation of an Olympic walker. I'm putting the feet down.
Mm-hmm.
And at times I was running. I ran back out to where the vehicle was. I get within sight of it, and I see my dad. He heard me coming. He got up and he said, "What is wrong? You get one?" He said, "What's wrong with you?" Now he can see that I'm in distress, that I'm scared. My eyes are big, and I'm not acting like my normal self. And it's still an hour and a half before it starts getting dark. And I said, "Dad, I want to go home." Just in that tone. He said, "Boy, what is wrong?" "I want to go home." And I'm walking towards the back of the Blazer. So he comes over to the Blazer and he stops and he says, "Why are you wanting to go home?" I said, "Dad, I need to go home." I said, I'm done. I'm going home. I'm going to sit in the truck. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not home." He said, "All right, we'll go home." And I unloaded my rifle right there, picked up all the bullets, threw the gun in the scabbard, threw the bullets in the scabbard, and I'm not allowed to do that. Dad says you put them back in the carrier, in the box. And I didn't do that. I throw my vest off, throw my hat. I go up, get in the passenger seat. I shut the door, the windows rolled up. I locked it. And he walks to the back of it, and he takes a clip out of his 30-06. And he pulls the shell out, and he says, "What is wrong with you? You don't ever act like this. What is wrong? Did somebody run you off?" I said, "No, Dad, let's go." He said, "Fine, we'll go home. But you're going to tell me what's going on before we get out there." He comes up and he starts it. starts the truck right up. He says, "What is wrong?" I'm not talking. Now I'm starting to slowly ease out of this seat into the floorboard because he's going back to where I know this thing's in the area. And he gets out there right where I went over the hill and where I come back up and hit the road. And by this point, I'm in the floorboard and I'm starting to cry. And my dad looks at me and he says, "What is wrong?" I wouldn't answer him. So he just kind of let it go. We got to the blacktop and he said, "Now tell me what's wrong." I'm not, I'm not, I don't want to talk. We get all the way back out to the town of Ripley. And he looked at me and he said, "You're going to tell me what's wrong." I said, "Dad, I don't want to talk about it." So at this point, he's starting to get mad at me because I'm not talking.
Mm-hmm.
And we pull underneath the interstate there at the Fairplain exit of I-77. He pulls off to the side and he put it in park. He said, "You're going to tell me what is wrong right now, or I'm getting out of this truck and I'm taking my belt and you're going to get it." And I'm not dumb. My dad tells me that. I'm going to start spilling my guts because I know what that leather belt means.
Mm-hmm.
He's mad to the point where you've done made him mad and you're going to get a few 10, 12 lickings across your backside with a leather belt. And I start telling him, and the first thing I said to him, I said, "You remember that movie we watched last year? That big hairy thing at the Legend of Boggy Creek?" He said, "Yeah." I told you them things are not real. I looked at him and I said, "Dad, they are." And now, mind you, I still got tears coming down my face, and he's just, "Okay, tell me what happened." And I started telling him, and the more I told him, he doesn't have that face of like he's judging me. It's like he knows and understands because I was raised, you don't lie to your parents.
Right.
I mean, if you did, you got your backside busted, and they knew when you lied. And I learned that at a very young age. You don't lie to your mom and dad, and you don't lie to your grandmother. You just don't do that. And Dad kind of looked at me and he said, "I believe you." And he just turned back around and got back on the steering wheel because he had spun himself around in between the
Mm-hmm.
two bucket seats in front of the Blazer. And he put it back in gear and we got up on the interstate. And he's driving down the interstate and he looks at me and he says, "You can't tell your mother or your grandmother." And I looked at him and I said, "Why?" "Because if you do, they'll never let any of us go hunting again."
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at him and I said, "Is that an order?" He said, "Yeah, that's an order."
It still bothers you to this day, don't it?
Yeah,
I thought so. I
yeah,
could see it.
yeah. My blood pressure's going up every time I think about it.
Yeah, I seen it. I'm sorry about that. You okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. I was going to ask you questions, but I really don't want you to have to relive through it again. You know what I
Oh, I'm
mean?
fine. You
You
can ask
sure?
all you want.
Well, I was just trying to go with, the rock was 7 foot tall, and you seen that first movement going over the top, so it tells me it was at least 7'3", and I'm sure your rock is somewhat of a guesstimate. So you 7'3" tall, and when it stopped, was it facing away from you?
It was facing out the bench that it was on. Uh, I'm at the top of the bench, and the
Mm-hmm.
rock is about 20 feet below me, which is almost to the edge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it come out on the edge, and it was facing this way. I'm sitting up here, and it was looking that way.
Okay. And then all of a sudden it smelt you, didn't it? Or it knew you was there at some point.
It never, it, I don't think it smelled me because what little bit of air that was moving
Yeah.
at that time of day comes out of the hollow and goes uphill. It
Yeah.
was rising.
Hmm. And you didn't smell nothing.
No, there was no smell to it, but it
Hmm.
sure did look ugly.
Oh yeah. What color skin was it? You said the hair was kind of like an auburn, reddish
Mhm.
brown. I'm gonna call it. Is that right? What color
Yep,
skin was it?
like a dark chocolate.
A dark chocolate.
Yeah, if you get a dark chocolate bar from Hershey's or something,
Mm-hmm.
it was that dark,
What about
almost
its
to a
eyes?
black.
What about the
Huh?
eyes? The eyes.
They were solid black. There was no whites, no coloration in the eyes. They were solid black.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell if anything was moving in there at all, like looking left or right?
No,
No. It just looked like it was dead eyes, like a shark.
basically, yeah.
Hmm. It's interesting. It's interesting. So, what happened after that? Did you go hunting?
No,
No.
it. My dad, they went doe hunting later that year. Another week or two later, I didn't go. I stayed home, and I didn't turkey hunt. Uh, they'd go. Dad would take us and go catfishing at night. I sit in the truck. I wouldn't. I wouldn't even put a rod in a line in the water.
Mm.
I know my dad's there, and I know my dad carried. Even back
Mm-hmm.
then, I mean, he always carried a firearm with him when he was out, and
Mm.
he, he would come over and he'd say, "Aren't you going to fish?" "No, Dad, I just don't feel like it. My stomach's not. I don't feel good in my stomach." He said, "That's still bothering you."
Yeah.
And that lasted about 4 years, 4.5 years, and it came. I grew up, turned 18, and I became a. I answered Uncle Sam's call
Yeah.
and went into the military, and I went into the hardest branch there is. 13 weeks and nothing but tearing you down to build you up the whole time.
Yep.
I was a Marine,
Well, yep.
and I came home. Um, my dad looked at me one day, the Saturday before I came home, the week of Thanksgiving. I had 2 weeks off. I got a 2 week furlough. Came home. I got here Saturday afternoon. Dad looked at me and he said, "You going hunting Monday?" Don't really want to. And my older brother and my little brother looked at me, and my brother-in-law looked at me, and my uncle was standing there, and my cousin was standing there, and my aunt and my mother and my grandmother, and all of them looked at me and said, "Why not?" And Dad just kind of looked at me kind of crossways and didn't say nothing. I knew what that meant. I'm not stupid. I just don't feel like going hunting. That was my excuse. And I don't know if Mom and Dad had a talk. I don't know what they talked about. But Sunday afternoon, they made Sunday dinner, and Mom said, "Sit down right here." And I'm sitting right beside Dad, and that's not my place at the table. That's her place. And my grandmother sits across from my mother. And I'm sitting there, and Mom's sitting right to my right, and my grandmother's across the table, and my dad's right there at my left. And he says, "You're going hunting tomorrow morning. You don't have a choice, so just shut up."
Yes, sir.
"Yes, sir." And my mom elbowed me and said, I I kind of had something to do with that. And I said, "Thanks, Mom."
She betrayed you, did she?
Well, she doesn't know. She doesn't know
Right,
why I
right.
hadn't been going,
Yeah,
because I was told, "Don't tell your mother or your grandmother. If you do, none of us will be hunting."
right.
And I'm like, okay. And then everybody starts piling into the kitchen, because it was the tradition at my family that on the Sunday before opening day of the week of Thanksgiving, everybody shows up, moms and dads, and you come and eat dinner, and we all make plans where we're going to go, what we're going to do. And Dad, we're sitting in there, and there's all the men in my family are here. And Dad had that whole 2 weeks off. He saved his vacation, you know, and took the 2 full weeks. And he said, uh, you boys do whatever you want. Your brother's going with me. Okay, Dad. That's all I
Yeah,
could
sir.
say.
Yes, sir.
And I went out Monday morning with him, and we walked into the woods while it was still dark, and we hunted till about 11 o'clock. Didn't see nothing. Um, Went back to the truck. My aunt makes these. She takes biscuits that are in a can and makes apple turnovers out of them.
Mm,
And well, I could eat back then, like 5 people's worth of food. And I ate a bunch of those, and my dad said, "You ready to go?" And I said, "Yeah." So I started hunting again, and I hunted all that 2 weeks with my dad every day, day in, day late to dark, and you know, nothing happened in the same area that I seen this thing.
yeah.
And I got a deer, and you know, I got back in the swing of it. And this
Yeah.
is 4.5 years, 4 years later, 5 years almost 5 years. And Dad just, he said, "You're all right. Nothing's going to bother you." And he would talk to me while we were out there. He sat within 3 or 4 feet of me the whole time. And he said, "You're all right. You don't have to worry about it. They're not going to come around you anymore. And if they do, I'll kill it before it gets here." And I just looked at him, and I thought, that rifle ain't big enough. And that kind of went through my head. And at that point, I went out and bought, my little brother had bought a 300 Win Mag, and I went out and bought one. And I got so good with it that I could throw it to my shoulder. The scope lined up with my eye, and I don't
Yeah.
care if that deer was running 200 yards away, it hit the ground. And I carried that rifle for years. Um, I sold it to a buddy of mine. Um, Once I'd moved to Ohio, up in Columbus, Ohio, I sold it to him. He was going out west, going elk hunting. He wanted it. He said, "I give you $2,000 for it right now." I said, "You got the money in your pocket?" He said, "No, I'll go to the bank." He went to the bank on a Saturday. He come back about an hour and a half later, and he had 20 $100 bills. He said, "There you go."
Mm,
Because it would shoot under a quarter, 4 shots under a quarter. And I sold it to him, and I had other rifles at that time. I didn't care. And that was something I bought for myself. If it had been something my dad bought for me, it
no
never would
way.
have been sold.
No.
You couldn't have put a price on it. And
Yeah.
I got into hunting, and I've been hunting ever since. But I've been hunting other things too.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. A big guy like you, football player, and I know it shook you up. It changed everything. And here you go into the Marines, and just as well as I do as everybody else. It's one of the toughest military outfits that we have. One of them, as far as just a person that just gets in, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, and then you come back after all that training and all that time, more of a man, I'm gonna say, more clearer thinking. You're not thinking
Mhm.
like of a teenager, and you come back and you're still with a memory of this thing. And when you go out hunting, it still bothered you.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. Well, you know where I'm going with this. You're a
Mm.
full grown man, you know, and it affects you that way. That's that tells me just how afraid you really were, how scared you were, and how well it impacted you on your first sighting. Uh, I kind of hate to bring this part up, but here we go. You said you hunted other things.
Hmm.
What else did you hunt? What'd you do?
Well, I got into looking into what these creatures were, trying to find them. Uh, and like most researchers out there, for the first 4 or 5 years, you're just kind of fumbling through the woods and you're doing things that alert them that, it's a human and we're not going to worry about it. And they walk away. You just don't find them. And I found footprints. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. I found footprints and I found uh, trees that were 4 inch thick trees, 5 inch trees, 6 inch trees that were bent over in bows and held underneath a log. And I found them, entwined and everything else. And I found markers and, I found all the basic stuff. Never saw a Bigfoot. Um, and I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong? And I happened to go to a town here in West Virginia, Summersville, and I'd heard about these Bigfoot that are what we call the Yahoo here in West Virginia. It's not a different, they're not a completely different species. They're Bigfoot. They're just kind of aggressive. And I'm asking around, I'm asking the old timers, because I stopped in at the local gun shop and was talking to old guys, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, we don't talk about that up here."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Was well, anybody I can talk to?" Yeah, there's this one guy, but he lives over towards Nettie. You'll have to go over there to talk to him. And they gave me the address and told me how to get there. And I went over there and walked up and knocked on his door. And I said, "Such and such told me that you deal with Bigfoot creatures." And he said, "Yeah, have a seat." And he looked at me and he said, "How much do you know?" I said, "Well, I know they make footprints and I've casted them and and I've seen tree bows and I've seen tree breaks and I've seen a tree turned upside down, stuck in the ground." And he said, "Oh, you're still a rookie."
Mhm.
I'm no rookie by any sense of the word. It was my comment. He looked at me and
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, you're still a rookie. If that's all you've seen, you haven't seen one, then you're still a rookie. Now I'm gonna teach you." He said, "I like you." He said, "I like you for two reasons. One, you did your duty as an
Yeah.
American citizen." He said, "Two, you're not afraid. Now you're not afraid." He said, "You told me, what got you into this." He said, "When you were telling me you were afraid, but now you're not, you got that gleam in your eyes of, you're going to find these things. You need
Mhm.
to know to satisfy you." So he took me under his wing for about 5 years. And the first time he took me out, eh, it was like going hunting with my dad when I'm 7 years old. You're making too much noise. You need to slow down, watch where you put your feet. I'm standing there going, "Good Lord, I'm quiet for somebody my size." And jeez, give me a break. And it was like being with my dad at age 7 again. And the whole time he's just shaking his head, going, "Oh, rookies." And he
What am
just,
I gonna do with you?
just like, "All right, I'm too much of a rookie. I need to get out. I just need, thanks, but no thanks. I can't deal with the of you chewing me out like my father would." And he said, "If I don't, you'll make mistakes. And if I tell you what mistakes you're making, you'll know not to do it again. And another week went by. I'm home. I'm out of the military, and he just he said, "All right, look, I'm gonna tell you the secret to finding these things." And he threw out this big topo map of Nicholas County. He got one and he'd had it blown up, and he said, "Point to where you think a Bigfoot will be." And I pointed, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
And he said,
Rookie.
"No." He said, "Look, let me show you something. There's three things that these creatures need. They need water, they need food, they need cover where they can lay up during the day, or in the wintertime, they can hide in caves or dugouts that they make. They dig into a hillside and make a cave out of it. And that's what they need." Okay, so where do we need to look? He said the easiest place, but the worst place to deal with is right here. And he pointed to a big bowl behind some on the backside of Summersville Lake. And I said, "What makes that the worst place?" Because that's where the Yahoo are. They're dangerous. I'm like, "When we going?" He said, "We're not." And I'm like, "But you just told me where they are. Why can't?" He said, "Because one or both of us won't make it out of there. That's how aggressive these creatures are." He said, there's been hunters that went in there bear hunting and their pack of hounds were dead. They killed the whole pack. And I've bear hunted all my life with hounds, most of my life. And I'm thinking, a pack of bear hounds? How the heck are they gonna? He said, "They're faster than dogs. They can run a quarter horse down, no problem. They can run beside your car." And he started pulling out all these reports, and I'm standing there reading them, and people are saying this thing ran beside my car for half a mile, no problem. It wasn't heavy breathing, and I'm thinking, "Okay, I see your point." He said, "Now we'll do it this way." He showed me how to do it. I got better. He started teaching me how to make calls and what their calls seemed to mean. And he kind of slowly edged me into it, refined all of my rough edges, and we started seeing Bigfoot because I was paying attention to what I was doing and the areas we were going into. And we were going out, checking reports out, and we'd find markers of Bigfoot, trees bent over, twisted 8, 9, 10 feet in the air, footprints. And he's like, "Now you got it." He said, "I got a report just the other day for that bowl, and we're going to go check it out." He said, "We're not going to check it out right now. We're going to wait till after the first snow." Why? He
That's
didn't
what
say
I would think.
anything.
Yeah.
And from what he taught me, I kind of deduced, well, maybe after the first snow, they'll stay laid up while we were in there and they wouldn't be, trying to push us out.
Hmm.
And we went in there and we looked around. We got in there probably 10 o'clock in the morning. 2:30 that afternoon, I looked at him. I said, "I've got to go." He said, "Well, go up there." He said, "And while you're up there, check for prints." So I walk up there and there's a big oak tree and there's a big rock there. And I looked down and there's a print. And I told him. He said, "Well, is it in the snow? We can cast it if it ain't in the snow." And he's talking to me. And I said, "No, it's in snow," and I don't hear him anymore. He's just, and I turned around and looked, and he was standing there. So I went and used the restroom. I stepped over behind a tree and used the restroom. And when I stepped back out from behind a tree, I'm like, "Where in the heck did he go?" And I run down the hill. I'm 75 foot from where he was just standing. And I run down there, and yeah, there's boot marks right there on that rock, and in the snow on the rock. There's no other prints going off the rock except for the prints that we came in on. And and I start screaming, hollering for him, and he, couldn't find him. So I ran out of there. I'm the only one packing. He never carried a gun. And I ran out of there and ran down and jumped in my truck, ran down the road to a telephone, and I called the state police, dialed 911, or dialed the number back then. It wasn't 911.
Mm-hmm.
And, or it may have been. I don't remember. I don't remember because everything was a blur after I got in the truck. But the police told me go back to where I was at. They'll be there. Wait for us. Flag us down when we get there. Well, 2 state patrol cars come screaming up the road, lights, everything. And I flag them down, and they pull in, and they're like, "Where was he at? Show us where he was at. We need to, you might want to take that gun off and put it in your truck." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And they kind of didn't like the idea of me carrying. They want, they're carrying 38s, at this
Mm-hmm.
time, or whatever they got back then, a 45 or something like that. And I'm like, "No, I'm carrying a 44 Magnum, something that'll put a hurting on something," or at least I thought that. And we go back in there, and they're looking around there, and they see his boot prints on the rock, and they're like, "Okay, well, you need to go back to the truck. There'll be a DNR officer that shows up." As soon as I got back to the truck, DNR was sitting there waiting on me. And he's like, "All right, tell me what happened. Did you have your gun out and you shoot him? Is he dead? What'd you do to him?" I said, "I didn't do anything to him." I said, "He's my friend." I said, "He's an older man, and he was showing me things in the woods. I was just trying to learn." And the DNR looked at me, and he said, "I think you killed him." And I looked at him in my eyes. I'm looking at him going, "No, I would never do that." I said, "I'm not in a war." I said, "That's the only time I would take a life. If it was meaning to save, you know, somebody in my family, my nieces, my nephews, my brothers and sisters, mom and dad, that's the only way I would do that." And he's like, "I think you killed him." And he puts me in handcuffs, puts me in the back of his car, in a state patrol car. And I'm sitting there probably 20 minutes in this car. And the state police come back out, and they talk a little bit. And one of the state police gets in his car, and he takes me to the barracks. And I end up sitting down there for 4 hours, retelling them what happened time and time again. And they said, "Well, what do you think grabbed him? Or, what happened to him?" And I finally looked at the state trooper, and I said, "I think a Bigfoot grabbed him." And he looked at me, and he said, "There's no such thing." I said, "You don't know what you're talking about. That, or else you're just lying to me." And he's like, "I don't care. There ain't no such thing. You killed him." And every other breath that they took, it was, "I shot him. I killed him. I just buried his body up there somewhere." And I said, look in my truck. See if any of his stuff's in there at all. Because what he got in my truck with was what he took with him. And I said, "There's no blood to where he was standing. If I'd have hit him with this gun, even at 75 feet, you know as well as I do, it would have left blood everywhere.
Absolutely.
Or if I'd have killed him, cut his throat, broke his neck, whatever, there would be something showing that I did it. There was a struggle. There's no struggle." And the state trooper, the other one that was there, and the DNR officer come in to the barracks, Now, I've been here 4 hours. And the first thing out of their mouth was, we need to talk. Talking to the investigator, the detective, and the other state trooper that was sitting there grilling me. And they come back and they said, we're going to give you a ride back to your truck. You need to go home. Don't come back. Just go to your home. Don't come back in here because it's going to be taped off. It'll be a crime scene. We don't think you killed him. And I'm like, what'd you find? We didn't find anything, but we didn't find anywhere they've been shot or that you killed him. We're letting you go. We're going to send you home. I get back up there. There's 6 police cars. There's a deputy sheriff there, 5 state troopers. And I go to leave. And on the way out, I try to go back around, and they've got it cordoned off them. You can't get in on any of the dirt roads that go into it. And I'm like, what's going on? Why won't they let me help? And I tried for 6 weeks to try to get in there. Every time I'd pull off somewhere, there'd be a state trooper pull up behind me. You need to get out of here. I know who you are. Get out of here. If you don't, I'm going to take you and put you in jail. Okay. I just want to find my friend. And that ate at me for 6 whole weeks before I got back in there. And when I went back in there, I'd done a thorough search, grid search, everything. I went in loaded for bear. I had my handgun, had a rifle, you name it, I had on me. I had a long knife. You know, if I got attacked, there was going to be a lot of things that were going to die, and that was the attitude I had. And I went into where I found a cave, and at the entrance of the cave, I found his hat. That's all I found. Nothing else.
Mm.
And they told his children that it was a bear attack.
But you
It
knew
ate
better.
him. Yeah, there wasn't no bear. That took something to think on our level to do that to him.
I hate to ask you this way. What do you really think happened?
The position he was in, he was standing beside an oak tree or beside a big pine tree. You know, it's one of them pines you could reach, almost get your hands around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of them creatures was up in that pine tree, and it come down and grabbed him and broke his neck and pulled him up in the tree. I never thought to look up. And I kick myself to this day for not looking up.
Yeah.
You know, if they hadn't killed him, I think if they didn't grab him and kill him and just had him, and I'd have looked up, they'd been a dead Bigfoot real quick.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
And, you know, I could have saved him. And I've kicked myself for 20 years because of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Bear, I'm sorry. I really am. I'm sorry about that, but I'm sorry for your loss of your friend, but more so, that's a hard deal. That's a hard deal. I tell you what, I don't know how to do this. I feel like we need to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Let you get yourself back together a little bit, and I'll tell you what. These people, when they had you in these barracks and everything, I'm gonna walk out and I'm gonna be back in about 4 minutes, guys. So y'all be patient with me. Bear knows what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, would you care to tell them what all they did to you while you was in the barracks? What all they tested? Uh, Anything else? But give me about 4 minutes and I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay.
Or anything else you want to talk about? I don't care. I'll be right
Awesome.
back.
Yeah. When the first thing they did to me, they did a gunshot residue test on my hands. Took my firearm from me. Um, Checked it to see if it had been fired recently. They ran all these tests, and then they took me into this little tiny room where there's a little table in there, and there's 4 chairs. And this detective walked in, and he sits down. And he says, shoves some papers over there, and he says, "I want you to write out, what happened, and don't lie." And I said, "Okay." And I wrote out on the paper what we did from the time we picked him up. It took me probably, I'd say, 6, 7 pages to write it all out. And I wrote it very detailed. And he looked at it and read it. And he's like, "Yeah, you forgot one thing." And I looked at him and I said, "No, I told you everything that we did and what, from the time that he disappeared to I got to the phone and come back." He's like, "No, you forgot the thing that you shot him." And I said, "You're an idiot." And at this point, I went from being worried about my friend to full on anger. And I started raising my voice and I'm screaming at this state police detective and this other state trooper that's sitting there. And I'm telling them they're a bunch of idiots. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the first thing about what's in the woods. You haven't a clue. I don't care if you lived here your whole life. If you've never seen one, you don't know what you're talking about. And I went off. I was mad. I mean, my face was red, my blood pressure was up. I was hot. And he's like, "Well, if you don't calm down, we're gonna put you in handcuffs." I said, "You can try." And I got mad. I was to the point where I was ready to get up, grab him by the throat, and slam him through a wall. And I don't get angry like that. I don't get angry like that very often. I don't get into fights um, because it's never good. If you been in the military, getting in a fight, something in you clicks and you don't know what you're doing. You're in the middle of a battle somewhere and you have to survive. And these 2 state troopers, they're accusing me this whole time. I'm sitting in there probably I've been there 30 minutes and they start, all this stuff. And this goes on for 2.5 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, and the whole time I'm like, you have no clue. There's no way in this world I would kill him. He was so much of a friend that I've eaten at his house with him. I've went fishing with him. I come and picked him up and went bird hunting with him, rabbit hunting, and everything else. I would never ever harm him. And I went through this for 3 hours probably with these guys, and I'm just like, I'm done. I said, "I'm not talking anymore. Call me a lawyer." And at that point, they shut up and they're like, "Okay." And they walk out and then they come back and no sooner they sit down, the DNR officer and that other state trooper showed up and he said, "We need to talk." And they walked out of the room and then they were gone probably 15 minutes or so and come back in and said, "All right, we're going to take you back to your vehicle. We're going to give you your weapon back, but it's not going to be loaded. We just can't, we don't think you would shoot anybody." I said, "The way I've been treated, you, yeah, you
They're
better make
getting
it
close.
loaded."
They're getting close.
And so they took me back to my vehicle and ordered me to go home, made me go home, wouldn't let me, couldn't get anywhere near it. And
Uh,
like I said, it took me 6 weeks to find his hat
Now, where did you find this hat?
at the mouth of a cave, the only cave in that whole hall. is a natural cave.
Well, I apologize to you because I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care what anybody thinks. Uh, I could feel that loss. I really could, and I just had to take a break and kind of get myself together. You know what I'm saying? That had to be tough. I mean, I could feel that, and I do apologize, but I know it's part of your story. I really
Yeah,
do, and I'm sorry for the loss of your friend. Uh, and you found his hat at the cave, and Bear, I'm gonna drift you away from this. Is that all right?
that's fine.
Yeah, let's drift away. Everybody knows the story now. Uh, I don't think. Yeah, Richard's asking a good question. Did the local law enforcement check out the cave? Uh, if I remember right, it was sometime later you met another state trooper that was there.
Yes.
You want to tell that?
Yeah. I went up there and tried to get in there and ran into one of those state troopers after I found his hat, and he pulled me over. I was leaving the area because I was bound and determined to find these creatures that had done this to my friend, and he was my mentor. You know, he was somebody I looked up to that was teaching me. And he always told me, he said, I won't teach you everything, but I'll teach you more than enough to find them. And I went in there trying to find them. I come out there one day, I had cuts all over my arms. You know, this is summertime. And I had briar cuts all over me, all over my face. And he pulls up and he says, what are you doing? I said, you know exactly what I'm doing. I said, you jackasses wouldn't even tell me what you found. And I found his hat, and I grabbed his hat off the passenger seat. It'd been there for a whole week sitting on the passenger seat where he'd sat many a time. I said, I found his hat. And I gave him the hat. And he looked at it and he said, yeah, that's his hat. He said, I've seen him around, you know, up here at Somersville and over at Natty, and he's a real nice guy. I said, yeah, I know. But yet y'all accuse me of killing him. And I don't appreciate that. You know, and I'm still mad
Yeah.
at this point at them. And he looked at me, he said, yeah, he said, I'm going to tell you something. We went in there and we found footprints that were not boot prints. Didn't match. They were bigger than y'all's feet. I wear size 14. I
Hmm.
got big feet for a human. You know, I'm not Shaquille O'Neal 22s, but you know, I got big feet and they're wide. And he said it wasn't none of y'all's boot prints. This was a human type footprint. He said we found probably 10 or 12 different prints, sets of prints, and we just cordoned the area off. And I asked him, I said, did you go near the cave? He said, yeah, there was 4 or 5 officers at the mouth of that cave. There was nothing there. Why? I said, that's where I found his hat. He just looked at me and he said, you know what that means, don't you? I said, yeah. I said, there's some Bigfoots that need to die and somebody needs to do it because if I do it, I'm going to make sure that the whole world knows about him. He said, well, you can't do that. There's too much at stake. And you just need to leave it alone and let us deal with it. I said, you got a week. Otherwise, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make some calls and I'm going to get a hold of C4 and I'm going to bring the whole thing down on top of him. He said, how do you know about C4? I said, I'm an ex Marine, Special Forces, an SRT. And he looked at me and he's like, okay, that explains. Yeah, that explains it. Why them guys were so scared when they brought you back up here that day.
Hmm.
And he said, let us deal with it. We'll take care of it. And they won't be, you won't have to worry about them anymore. And a week later, I went in there and there was nothing. No sign of them, no footprints. All the structures that they had, we had even found a built structure in there that looked like a big nest that they had built, and that was gone. It was torn down. Um, the upside down tree was cut and dirt piled on top of it. They cleaned it.
They
So
erased all evidence, did?
yeah, I don't know who done it. I'm pretty sure the state police of West Virginia didn't do it, and and I know for a fact there's no record of them doing anything. And the only record that showed up for him was um, mauled to death and eaten by a bear. That was all that was on there.
Was that on his
That was on the death certificate,
okay.
and they held a service for him, and that was it.
Hmm. All right. Let me ask you this: did that satisfy you?
No,
What'd you do?
I went in there again after that, and uh, that cave is no longer there. I brought it down.
Did you?
If there was anything in it, it's dead.
Now, is this where the Yahoos were at?
Yeah, there was that clan that was in there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go up there now, you'll find them again. They're back in there,
Are they?
still making that stupid Yahoo call.
Mm-hmm. I tell you what, man, that's just awful. Be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I'd like to get you off of it because it is such a bad memory. I know it is. And that's really tough. I'm telling you, I can feel it. I don't know about the rest of these folks, but I can feel it. And I'm so sorry. I'll say it again. I'm going to move on to you. I'm going to put it in a good way. You said you've killed one. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that? Because that sounds like some sweet revenge in a way.
Well, yeah. Um, a buddy of mine, he was an Army Ranger. Um, he started going out with me, and he'd heard him scream and everything else, and we went into this area, and he met me, and when he pulls up, here's this blonde, built like a brick house, or outhouse, brick outhouse, beautiful girl. And I walk over and I go, "What do you think you're doing bringing her?" He said, "Man, uh, she's my girlfriend, and she just didn't believe what we were doing." I said, "Are you an idiot?" And I got a little bit upset with him, and I told him you're a moron, you're stupid. I've told you time and time again, don't ever bring your girlfriend. And he's like, "Well, she's here, she's going, she's dressed, ready to go. Let's go." So we go back up this road, and we have to crawl across rocks and everything else in my truck and up this hill, and it's almost straight up. And when you look from the bottom to the top, you're like, yeah, that's going to be lots of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And she's sitting in the middle, and I've got a full size truck or a small truck, an S10. She's sitting in the middle, and it's a standard, and I'm hitting her knee with.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to teach her you're not coming again. I'm going to be banging your knees and shifting gear and everything else. And
You was speed shifting, wasn't you?
oh yeah, she never complained once. She's like, oh, and he's like, quit doing that, man. Don't hit her so hard. And I'm like, shut up. You brought her.
It's your
And
fault.
we get up there to the top of the ridge and we start out this little road. And he's like, this is a pretty good level place. Let's just walk out here and you do a how. we walk out there, and it's getting 6:30, 7 o'clock. It's late summer. It's hot, and one answers, and it's by this point he had walked out to the end of the point, and he's probably 30, 40 feet up in front of me. I'm the last one in line. I've got a rifle on me. So does he. And she's standing almost in the middle of us. She's 10, 15 feet away from me, maybe 20 at the most. And I'm looking this way because I'm watching our backside towards the vehicle. And I hear something, and I'm like, that was a growl. And I turn around and look at her, and she's standing there, and her eyes is about this big around. And I said, "Did you just hear a growl?" She said, "Yeah, it's behind me." And she started turning around, and she screamed. I didn't know a woman that small could scream that loud.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason she screamed, this big hairy arm's coming out to grab her by the head. And I'm at an angle from where she is. She's standing here. I'm standing over here, and I can see the backside of the tree. And there's a Bigfoot standing there. And I threw that 300 Magnum up, and crosshairs hit its head, and I squeezed the trigger. I flipped safety off, boom. And you could see the gray matter go out the backside of the head, and she's just standing there screaming. She's got her hands up, screaming, scared to death. She's lost it.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that gun went off, he comes running back to her, grabs her up, throws her across his shoulder. He's hightailing it down the road. I said, "Smart man, let's go." We left.
Yeah, time to go.
And we got in the truck, and he said, "We ought to go back and get that thing." I said, "No." I said, "That wasn't the one that screamed. There's one over the mountainside that's coming up the hill to find out what happened to that one." I said, "We're going to be in a world of hurt. It's not going to be pretty. We're going to run out of ammo before we get done." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, let's go." And she's sitting on his lap, curled up in between his arms. He's got his big arms around her. And she's 120 pounds soaking wet with all the clothes she had on. And she's curled up like a baby on his lap. Knees are up. She's got her arms around her knees, and he's got his arms around her. And I hightailed it out there as fast as I could go without tearing my truck up. And I hit the blacktop and reached down took my foot off the throttle, pushed it out of 4 low lock into neutral, and then pushed it down into 2-wheel drive. I jammed the gear in, and we left black marks, and we got out of there. And I took him back to the car. I said, "You can't talk about this." I said, "If you do, somebody's going to show up at our front door. We're going to disappear." I said, "You'll never get to marry her." He said, "Don't worry, I ain't saying nothing." And a week later, well, not even a week, 3 days later, I went back up there, and he went with me without her, of course.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find any trace of that Bigfoot. We had a blood trail. We followed it, thinking, how in the world did this thing with its head being blown out, how did it get off his heel? Well, we found out why. It's because we found footprints along the blood trail that couldn't have been that Bigfoot. There had to be 2 others that picked it up and carried it out of there. And we were standing there looking at each other, and then we got screamed at, probably 150 yards away, and they were directing it right at us. They were not happy with us, so we ran back to the truck, got in the truck, and left. And I've never been back in there since then for that simple reason. They probably know who I am, and they
Hmm.
probably don't like me.
Yep, no doubt. I hate to break this up for a minute, but Tom Reed wants to know, what was your MOS?
SRT, I was a Marine sniper. And then after my training at Quantico, I went in and became a DI. And then after that, I ended up on a SRT team during Desert Storm, going in and get pilots.
There you go. There you go. All right. Was this that dark when when it reached to grab her?
It was probably half an hour before it started, before the sun went down.
Right before the sun went down, so
Yeah.
the sun was kind of at an angle, hadn't went behind the trees yet. Is that what you're
Right.
saying?
It's still visible in the sky, but you could tell you only had probably half an hour left.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, because about that time, that's what I call my fishing time. When the sun's
Yeah.
just about going over a mountain, it's just like the sun's right there at the edge of the tree line. Uh, it would be a number. What number are you talking about?
Yeah, I know what he's talking about, but in order for everybody else to understand, that's a number's not going to do him any good.
Okay. Okay. Uh, anyways, I know the daylight that you're looking at. It's pretty much that you're not blinded by the light, and there's just enough light. You got, like you said, probably about 30, 40 minutes of daylight left, because that's when the fish would start biting for me. That's
Yeah.
how I'm judging your time. Um, and y'all went back. When you seen it, did it look like the other one? The one that you saw when you were 16?
No, this one looked completely different. This one looked like it was a um, Cro-Magnon man. That's all. That's the best way I can describe it. It had a brow ridge. You could see the brow ridge from the side profile. There was no mistaking it. It was very thick. It had high cheekbones, and it had hair down across its face like it had a beard.
Mm. Mm. Was that the only one you ever killed?
No,
No.
no.
Mm. Okay. Do you want to tell those?
I'll just yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Um, a friend of mine when I lived in Columbus called me, and his family was having trouble. And by trouble, I mean his cattle were starting to disappear. So he knew what I was into because this friend of mine was a state police, and he stopped me for being overweight in a truck. And I never got a ticket out of it. Just a warning, verbal warning. Don't carry that heavy anymore. Um, and we became good friends, and we're still friends. I still talk to him on the phone. And at that point, he called me on a Thursday. He said, "I need your help tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I don't work tomorrow. I was going to go home and see my kid." He said, "Well, is there any way you can get out of doing that? I really need your help." Okay. So I called my son and talked to him on the phone and told him I had something that came up and I needed to take care of it. And I went down and met him, went up to his house. He lived probably north of me, about 40 minutes or so. And I went to his house and we went down to just north of Marietta and went out to his uncle's farm. Uh, he had a friend meet us there. His friend knew where we lived, knew where his uncle lived. And, we went and did an investigation on that night. We sit in the barn and we could hear him scream. And then we heard uh, evidently they either grabbed another cow or something, or a young bull or something, and left. And so Saturday morning, we went looking around and started finding signs of them, footprints, and then I found a pile of bones, cow bones, hip bones, skulls, leg bones, ribs, and all these are clean. I mean, they picked them pretty much clean. And there's probably 5 or 6 cows laying there. And that night, I told him, I said, "Look, I said, there's things that I want to make sure that we let them know that they're not going to. They need to leave." So I showed him how to do it. And we put out flashbangs, and they walked right through them like it was nothing. Um, the littlest one was probably around 9 foot. The biggest one was probably well over 12 foot, close to 13, I would say. And we're not talking about these skinny Bigfoot. We're talking about Bigfoot that probably weigh 1,000 pounds or more, probably somewhere in the 1,000, 1,500 pound range. And at that point, they walk through those flashbangs like it was nothing, and they come out behind the barn, and there's like 100 yards between the forest and the barn, and they locked eyes on us, and 2 of them came running, and both of them hit the ground. And then another one came running, and they opened up on it, and it dropped and hit the ground. And then the fourth one came running, the fifth one ran the other way. When the fourth one came, I didn't hesitate. I shot it at probably 80 yards, and they were screaming and growling and everything. They were coming to get us. And at this point, the third one that they shot at, they'd hit it. I guess they hit it twice. I don't know because we never found it. It got back up, and it took off running on all fours back into the woods. And the uncle come out there and he said, "What are we going to do with this?" And I said, "Well, we can put them on display and may go to jail, or we can just bury it." He looked at me and said, "We're not putting nothing on display. We're going to bury it." He went and got a tractor, and he dug a hole, and he took the tractor and shoved them in the hole, covered it back up, and he said, "I don't know anything about anything. All I know is that my cows disappeared. I don't know what happened to them, and that's all I know." And he kind of looked at me and he said, "How about you?" I said, "I don't know nothing. I was just down here having shooting practice with my buddies at your farm." And he just kind of said, "Yeah, you were." And we left it at that. And there's still probably what's left of them is buried in the ground out there right now, probably 8 foot deep.
Mm-hmm. Did y'all ever cut them up?
Nope. Shoved
No,
them in the hole.
just shoved them in the hole.
Just
Okay.
shoved them in. Whatever way they ended up, it's the way they ended up. And he started covering them with dirt.
Hmm.
Let
Well,
me
I'll tell you.
clarify something. When I said tractor, I meant to say excavator. He had a mini or not a mini one, but he had not a big one, but a mid-sized excavator.
About like a 140.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. All equipment all the time, so I know what the mid-size are. Uh, all right. I don't know if I want to address this or not. They're still wanting to know the MOS.
Well, it has been 34 years. I would have to go look at it nowadays. I know they're talking about the number for the MOS, but I
Yeah.
cannot remember it. It's been
I
that
could.
long.
Okay. Been that long?
Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
it's almost 56. Yeah.
Whew.
My granddaughter.
Okay.
Later.
Uh, uh,
Granddaughters.
oh yeah, Richard. There's one thing I will not do. Let's put it this way: I won't ask for the name of the guy because that's out of respect. You know what I'm saying? So I will not ask that question. Um, let's see here. All right, here's one that I'm sure you wanted brought up, and I was going to bring it up.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Who's it from?
one's from Richard,
Uh-huh.
and I think Brian
Mm-hmm.
also asked about this. So, what they're wanting you to do, and I think you already know where we're going to this. Okay,
Probably.
they want you to do a yell.
Okay.
Okay, do you need a second to build
Aggressive
up
or
your lungs?
non-aggressive?
Okay, I got a feeling they want to hear the constipated hillbilly.
Oh, good Lord.
You know, this is your own fault, right?
Yeah, it's not my fault. It's my buddy's fault. He named it.
Now, I understand that this is the aggressive.
Yeah, this one is aggressive.
Do you want to go the non-aggressive?
No, I can do the aggressive one. Might not be able to talk too much, but I can do the aggressive.
All right.
Okay. Which it when I can stand up and do it, it's a lot longer.
A lot longer, so it
Yeah.
has to go longer.
Yeah.
If I remember right, it's like 20 to 30 seconds.
Something like it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That got me in
Uh,
trouble there 2 years ago at Salt Fork.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord have mercy. You know, my favorite one is the non-aggressive one. And you know why?
Yeah, they don't get you in trouble. They just get them to come in and look at you and go, "Oh, it's a human. Okay, whatever. Bye."
Yeah, yeah. Is there any other particulars that this gentleman taught you besides the yells?
Um, he he taught me a lot about how to look at topo maps and figure out, the type of terrain that they like. They tend to like. Everybody thinks they travel the ridges all the time. 90% of the time, you're never going to find them on top
Mm,
because on top it's fairly open in most wooded areas. You'll find them about halfway down where the thermocline changes. And what I mean by thermocline is the higher you go, the hotter it is, but the lower you go towards the hollow, where the water source is and all the rocks and all that stuff is where you're going to find them, and that's thicker brush. Well, they can get up underneath that brush, lay down, and you can walk right past them. Unless you're going to step on one, you're not going to put them up. You're not going to get them up. You're not going to get them to move. They're going to sit there and watch you, and they can maneuver in that brush quiet enough for you not to notice. You to think that it's another animal, it's a deer or a bear or whatever. And he taught me to look for things like that on top of maps. Told me to find creeks. If it's got a spring seep in it, that's the best place because they like, fresh water. What's in the creeks, it's ran, deer, all the other animals out there, they defecate and use the bathroom, and that stuff ends up in the creek. But at Spring Creek, a spring seep, they don't. But there's other things like, he's taught me how to use calls, um, like when to use a whoop. Um, everybody thinks the that, you know, whoops a female thing, and it's not. The males do it too, but they do it for different reasons than the female. Female does it as a locator to let them know that they're there, because normally they don't scream. They don't do howls. They don't let everybody in the whole world know that they're there. It's the males that do it, because it's a male's job in the family or in their clan or family unit or whatever you want to call it. It's the male's job to be dominant. And there's one big male. I don't care how big the clan is. There's one dominant male. He's the alpha. He's the boss. Everybody answers to him. Even his mate answers to him. But everybody else in the clan answers to her when she tells them to do something, because he backs her up. And normally she takes care of the young. And the reason I know that is because for 5 years after my friend died, I watched a clan go from the size of 5 Bigfoot, including a small one, a little one, go from 5 to 9 in 5 years' time. And then somebody decided to build a house, and they automatically picked up the home and left the territory.
Hmm. Brian wants to know something. He says, "What's the idea behind the owl call or Ohio howl?" He said he used it as a call blast. He got a log thrown at his truck.
Yeah, that's an aggressive call.
No, it ain't, is it?
Yeah, it is. That's a challenge. It's not a challenge to us. It's a challenge to other Bigfoot in the area. What you're doing is, when you do the Ohio howl or the aggressive one that I do, that call says, I'm Barney Badbutt and there ain't nobody that can beat me up.
Uh-huh.
That brings the alpha in. And it's usually not a good thing to bring him in, because his mentality is, I've got to protect my family. And that means everybody in the clan. Um, and I've seen it. I've seen that big male do that Ohio howl type call, and he challenged another one that was screaming at him from half a mile away. And when he heard it, he turned, screamed, did the super aggressive growl in it. No inflection, just basement tone the whole time. And when he left running. He was fired up. The other two other males that were there at the cave at the time, and this is right before dark. They come out of the cave when he took off. They come out of the cave on all fours, and they were running. They left the territory, and they were going to a fight.
You said they come running on all fours. I have got to know, and this is myself, but I've got several people on here that have said something about spider crawls,
Yeah,
running on all fours.
yep.
I've heard some say that they're faster on all fours. I've heard some say they were faster on two legs.
They're
What's
faster on all fours.
okay? Well, what's the spider crawl?
The spider crawl is an intimidation tactic that they use. It's meant to intimidate you, because it looks exactly like a huge, depending on the color of the creature. If they're black, it looks like a black widow coming at you,
Hmm.
supersized. 1,000-pound spider coming at you on all 8 legs, and that's what it looks like. And they're very adept at doing it, because of they got them massive hands, they got that massive strength, they can support their body weight, and it's very intimidating. I've been charged by a female on all fours, and I think that I was more scared of her than I've ever been. Well, maybe not, except for the first one. Um, when that female ran up on me down in North Carolina, behind that lady's house, yeah, that was intimidating. I didn't have a firearm. All I had was a machete, and I think I got her to understand that if you come over here, I'm going to start cutting you up into pieces with this machete. One of us is not leaving, and I knew it'd probably be me, but one of us wasn't going to leave there, and the other one that did leave was going to be hurt.
Do they do it on their fingers?
No, normally they don't.
So the palms of their hands are on the
The
ground?
females tend to do the palms of their hands because their hands are not, they don't have uh, that extra padding on their knuckles, from calluses and stuff on their hands like the males do, because the males use their hands to rip things apart, and they dig into the ground with it, and so they have calloused on their knuckles and on their fingertips, and then their palms of their hand are all calloused. So that way they can do what they need to because they're the strength. And the females, they do it on their palms, but it's still an intimidation factor. It's meant to scare you.
Is it not used to scout somebody?
No,
No?
no, when they want to scout you, they'll walk upright. I've never
Okay.
seen one walk in, and it's an intimidation thing, because once they get to a certain point, if they are not charging you on their hands, the males will stand up to charge you. The females will stay down low because you can't tell how big they are, and it's meant to scare you to get you to leave. But the male, if he's going to charge you, he'll stand upright and hold himself out and look like he's supersized, and they'll intimidate you by their size.
So basically, the male's doing like a male turkey would do. They fluff out.
Yeah, he'll hold himself like he's bigger. He'll expand his chest, and he'll hold his arms out further, and he looks like he's a bodybuilder on super steroids, and and he don't blink. He just stares at you the whole time. They don't have to, like us. We blink constantly,
Yeah.
and they don't seem to blink as much as we do.
Now, I got a buddy on over there in the chat room, and I'm asking for him.
Mhm.
He didn't tell me to ask this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. He had a sighting where he seen one on the side of the road, and he said its arms was raised up in the air. What does that mean? What's going on there? Because I've never heard of that.
I've only seen one do that, and he done it because of the proximity to the motor vehicle that I was in, and he was standing on the side of a dirt road, a gravel dirt road, and he stuck his arms up, and he just kind of looked down at me, and it's I don't know if he was trying to intimidate me, because he didn't do a very good job, because I kind of laughed at him
Yeah.
because he looked kind of funny doing that
Yeah.
to me, and I've seen quite a few over the years, and he just it was like he was there, and I guess he was afraid that I would hit him, and I that's the only thing I can come up with. It just made he just raised his arms and looked down at me as I went past, and they can't move their head very far, but he kind of just started turning his body, and then whenever I got past him and couldn't see him anymore, I guess he dropped his arms and went across the road, or because when I turned around and went back, he wasn't there.
Mm. Mm, mm, mm. Well, I'm thinking more like Brian sitting there saying he would think like Clyde when he would put his arms up like an orangutan. I'm
Well,
thinking the same thing.
that's a very good possibility, but Clyde did it upon an order from Clint Eastwood,
Yeah,
or his trainer, actually. But these things are, they've got the same brain that we got, basically,
yeah,
except they're more animalistic than we are.
but they're smart in the woods, though, ain't they?
Oh yeah, they're very smart in the woods. they can run circles around us and we not even know they're there.
I do have a question.
Okay.
You've got a lot more knowledge into this than I do. Do they make metal sounds? Kind of metalish.
They can typically with their mouth. Yeah.
What about the wood knocking? Is that them actually wood knocking, or are they doing the
No,
same
they're
thing?
wood knocking. They're not taking a stick and doing it. They're taking their big, oversized hand and hitting a hollow tree. They're
Okay.
not doing it with a stick, and that's why I tell everybody, if you want to go out wood knock, they're going to laugh at you the whole time. And that was demonstrated very well on Finding Bigfoot because they kept wood knocking all the time, and the Bigfoot never came near them. You know, I don't know why they thought they had to do that. That's something that's special to that creature. They do it for certain reasons, and that's it. They don't do it to communicate. They don't do it to say, "Hey, I'm over here." They do it because there's a certain meaning to it. Certain wood knocks mean this. Certain wood knock means that. It's a different pitch sometimes because of how they cup their hand and smack the tree. And when that happens, you know, your guess is as good as mine.
Hmm. I don't either. I don't know. I've heard people say that wood knocks really don't do no good. If this was what I call a true wood knock, I'll tell you about it later. I'll tell you
Okay.
about it later.
Can I ask a favor for a minute?
Sure.
Can I have a 2 or 3 minute break? I need to go grab some water. I'm about
Yeah.
dry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Appreciate it. I'll be right back. I promise.
Oh yes, sir. We think come to a close here in just a minute, anyways.
Okay.
All right. Brian, I will ask him about if there's a difference between male and female tracks. I don't know what. Waylon, where the hell you at? Richard, Joanne, what are you wanting to hear? What are you wanting to hear, hon? Uh, has he ever caught video and camera? I'm going to tell you, yeah. I've talked to this man extensively, and I know what has happened. Richard, if you'll call me, I will explain that to you because he doesn't have them no more. Let's put it that way. Let's see here. Let me back up a little bit more. And I sure hope y'all are enjoying this. And as far as that MOS mess, I know what Tom was doing, but trust me, it takes me a while to remember my old MOS. So anyway, I know you're here. Leave me out here, turkey. You know I gotta smoke a cigarette every now and then, little turkey. But I hope you're enjoying. Uh, well, we're fixing to get off here anyway, Waylon, here in just a minute. Unless well, I'll tell you what, Waylon, you might want to talk to him. So I'm gonna paste
Oh,
that back.
I'm back.
All
Sorry.
right. No, no big deal. No problem at all. I'm just trying to get see what other people was wanting to hear you talk about. Uh, I'm getting my buddy Waylon to come on here because I got to smoke a cigarette, and we're fixing to watch a ball game here in just a minute.
Oh,
Yeah, Alabama's in the Final Four. Roll Tide. uh, oh, I know what you mean, Brian. I know what. Trust me, Brian. Yeah, you don't know the half of what this man knows, and I don't either. Okay, he's gonna hold off on it. Okay, so where do I want to go with this? Okay, now you have described it to me in pretty much detail. I'm gonna ask this much. I'm not gonna go in that particular area. I'm trying to really see what I want to go with this. Uh, yeah, you lucky thing, Waylon. Anyways, all right. How many different types are there?
I classify them in 5 different types. The 5 types, I classify the first set of them as like the monkey types. And what I mean by monkey types, they look like chimpanzees, orangs, gorillas. They have that monkey face, and they're all wrinkled up in the face. Because they wrinkle up a lot. Um, And then type 2, I go with the Cro-Magnon. They have a very thick brow ridge. They got some human features. They still got that, you know, gorilla nose or chimpanzee type nose. They may have a little bit of a poof to their mouth, but not much. They don't have that muzzle that sticks out there very far. They look more human, like an early human, than they do an animal. And then, of course, you got the ones that look like us. You know, they don't have that sagittal crest, which is here. I got a small sagittal crest, but it's a human size one. And you know, usually they don't have hair on their face, and the older get, you know, their hair will start turning gray the older they get. And you know, it's that's the reason that a lot of people, when they see these creatures, they say they look like a human, and they just couldn't shoot it
Mm-hmm.
because they look like human. And I have my theories on how they got that far into the human features uh, into their DNA, but you know, that's a theory. I can't prove it. The only way I can prove it is if I went out and shot all five and brought them in all at once. And I'm not going to do that. I kind of like breathing. I got grandbabies, and I like to see them grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the type fours, which I call the Gudway. It's an Indian word for face eater. And the reason is because they tend to eat a lot of meat. They might have two canines sticking out of their lower lip or out of their top, and then they got a muzzle like a gorilla on their face. And they have a few human features, you know, like their shape of their eyes, but they still have animalistic tendencies. And what I mean by that, they don't have the high cheekbones like I do, and their eyes are further out on their head because they've got big heads. But they do tend to eat a lot of meat. And from what I've heard from the Cherokee and a couple of the other Native American tribes, they dealt with these creatures before. And these creatures tend to hunt people when they won't be harmed. They're smart. They don't go out and go up against the person that's carrying a big rifle. They don't go up against a person that's has got a big handgun on their hip or something of that nature where, you know, this person can get to their gun and shoot you or shoot it, actually. You know, an injured Bigfoot in the wild is probably a dead Bigfoot. And they have family units just like the other ones do. But then you got the nasty ones. The ones that I dealt with there in North Marietta, Ohio, um, this is the ones I call Janoskwa, and it means man eater. And the bad thing about it is they eat their own kind. They'll go in and kill. There might be four or five of them together, but they'll go in against the clan that's twice their size and kill every one of them. They're just that big, that strong. They're vicious. They'll rip Bigfoot apart. They don't care. And when it comes to a human, they don't care if you got a gun. You're dinner. If they see you and it's a Janoskwa, I hate to say this, but you're a missing person.
How would you know that? Let me ask you this: how would you know they're in the area?
Um, Game animals become very thin. The forest stays quiet. Um, you'll find a lot of bones of deer, cow, sheep, goats, dogs, cats, coons, possums. It doesn't matter. If it's got meat, they'll eat it. They don't care. And they don't try to cure their meat. They'll eat it whether it's rancid or not. If you go in an area and you constantly see dead deer on the side of the interstate, and you went through there yesterday morning and there's five deer laying there dead, and you come back through that evening and they're not there, don't go in the woods.
Hmm.
Stay out of there.
Hey, Waylon, I'm glad you could make it, bud. How are you doing?
I'm awake. I'm awake. I have my mic on mute. I'm here.
Okay. Do you have a question for the old bear?
Now, if you was gonna go smoke, I want him to hear his theory on how they got the human DNA in them. That's what I'm interested in. If he wants to tell it, if you don't want to tell it, I understand.
Do you
No,
want to tell it?
I
All
can
right.
give you what I've deduced over the years. Bigfoot have, according to the DNA research that was done on these creatures through their hair follicles, um, DNA scat that was in their scat. Uh, the other things that people have turned in, there is a female. Uh, I can't remember the name. I want to say female mitochondrial DNA that's in there. And then there is DNA that comes from something else. My theory is, and I know people are probably going to laugh and, well, whatever. He just has that theory because he was a minister or whatever. But um, the other DNA, I do believe, is because of the fallen uh, from heaven, the fallen angels out of heaven. They dupe women into having sexual relations with them after the flood. And after the flood, they went and tried to corrupt all the creatures on the earth that God had made. And somehow or another, the DNA from those creatures ended up mixing with the human DNA. And that's how we ended up with creatures that look like Goliath. They could speak the language, the old languages back then. And if you read the Bible, it tells you that that Goliath was covered in hair. It wasn't super heavy on his body, but he was covered in hair, and he was over 9 foot tall and had the strength of 10 men. Bigfoot has the strength of 10 men or more. And I know this because I've seen him push a tree over on me. And it wasn't a little tree, but it was a tree big enough and long enough that from 30 foot away, it pushed it over and knocked me into a big mud puddle. But that is how I believe these Bigfoot got the human DNA in them and how they have the ability to evidently mate with women. There's accounts of them raping women throughout history, and some of those women had young because of these creatures. And that's how we ended up with the type threes, which look more like human than all the rest of them do. And that's just my theory. I can't prove it. I can't prove it through DNA without a specimen, and that means a whole body. Um, but that's how I came to believe that they can. And according to what I've been told by the Native American and a report to come out of Brownsville, Texas, about that woman and man being out in the woods and him looking like an accordion, her chest ripped open, her tongue ripped out. Yeah, and the footprints that they found around the car, tells me that they did something to him, broke him down, and then did what they wanted to with her. And the Native American tribes also tell you that they would steal their women, and then some of them would come back a year later, or 2 years later, 3 years, and then they would talk about that they had little ones, and I guess they would check these women to make sure that they weren't lying, and the proof was there. And so yeah, It's a tangled web once you get into that, because I'm not a scientist. I can't prove it. I don't know how to do it. I can't prove it through DNA. And if you do a DNA study on them, you're called, they call it into question. They've done many scientists that have done a DNA on them, as they're crazy, don't know what they're talking about. But there's human DNA already in their system, and it's the female side of the cell, and it's been proven. It's just people look at it like, no, it's not proof, and it's proof. It's just they don't want to accept it. Did
Yeah,
that answer
so
your question?
oh yeah, it's amazing to me when we've all been close to elephants, been to a zoo, been to a carnival or whatever. An elephant out in the wild, he'll takes him 3 or 4, maybe 5 pushes. He'll push a big tree over.
Yeah,
When the limbs aren't low and the greenery's all up in top, a big old elephant will push it. He'll push that tree down to get to that top greenage where he can eat
yeah.
it. And an elephant, I've done forgot to weight them. An elephant, they're heavy. I've done forgot that, but
They're like 3 to 4 tons, I think,
yeah,
for a bull elephant.
yeah, they're big. I mean, they just like I said, I watched one last night. I think it took him about 6 or 7 pushes, and he pushed that big old tree over. And he would, it's just amazing. It's something. I mean, like I told Icebox, you go out and go find you a basketball goal that's 10 foot tall and
Hmm.
look at it. Step back and look at it. And look how wide that backboard is.
Hmm.
If he's 10 foot tall, he's probably going to nearly be as wide in the shoulders as a backboard on that basketball goal.
I've seen him that wide. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, when you stand there and look at it, and there's not a real, creature standing there, animal or people or whatever they are, you look at it and say, well, but when you got a big a big animal sitting there looking at a big animal like that, I mean, that's too close for me. Too close for comfort. I'm like, I hunted a lot back when I was younger. I never had any kind of strange encounters. I've had owls hoot of a daytime.
Hmm.
I remember that, but I never back then we didn't talk about Bigfoot
Yeah.
and
It
like that.
wasn't back
It
when I
just
first got into this. Nobody talked about it. I mean, you didn't have the internet. You had a little bit of the internet back then. Once I got in my 20s, but a lot of people still didn't have internet. You had AOL and a few other service providers back then. There wasn't very many, and most of it was word of mouth through a phone call, and I'd get phone calls all the time from people that were, I got this strange noise going on at my house. You go up there and it's some kind of a screech owl that they're hearing, and they don't know what it is, and it was
right,
usually people that were from the city that I would run into. And, they moved out in the country because they got tired of living in town. Gangs are starting and crime and everything else getting bad in town, and they move out to the country and they didn't know what they were hearing. But then you go out to a farmer that's been out there for, he's been out there for the past 30, 40, 50 years. He's lived there on that farm his entire life, and he hears something scream at night. He knows what it is because he's heard everything. And when he hears this, he's like, that's something I don't know nothing about. And then, through word of mouth, they would call me and have me come out and take a report or go and look, and you'd find markers of these creatures in the woods. And most of the time they would just move through. And if it was a clan that was staying there, they didn't cause any trouble. But then you still had reports of people, disappearing. And
oh
most
yeah,
of that was in, national forest out west. And, once we got the internet and you could, you know, talk to somebody that lives out in California that's been out there in the out there where the huge red sequoia trees are and all that stuff, and they've seen Bigfoot, and they've got reports of people, disappearing, and they look into it, and they get run off because of the government won't let you go in that area or whatever. You can put two and two together, but they always go back after the government officials leave, and they find footprints and they find things that tell you that Bigfoot are in the area. And they never find this person. They don't find anything of them, or they find their boots 10 miles from where they parked their car, and there's snow around or something of that nature. That's something most humans won't do. Even hypothermia will make you take your boots off. But in the dead of summer, when there's no snow on the ground, and you find big footprints right around where they found the boots. So, there's a connection between these creatures, people disappearing, and the other cryptids that are out there. Um, I don't know about the rake. I don't know about what is the other ones that are out west typically. They used to be humans, and now they're walking around with antlers on their head and stuff like that.
Wendigo.
Yes, those I don't know about. I don't deal with stuff like that. I'm strictly Bigfoot. I've seen two dog men and one werewolf in 3 consecutive Saturdays back when I was younger. It scared the daylights out of me. You could feel the evil from these creatures, and I just don't deal with it. I just didn't deal with the problem, and I told the farmer, I said, if you want to keep your sheep, keep them in the barn. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not dealing with that issue. And I walked away.
Well, I don't blame you. I had this is the last thing I let Tommy, Icebox take it back over. I had a bamboo patch that was totally destroyed. Icebox may have told you this. I don't know if he told you or not. And I'm talking about big bamboo. I had one of the biggest bamboo
Mhm.
patches in Winfield, Alabama, probably. And man, they mangled that stuff up and twisted it up. It was back when I
Mhm.
was at my height and played football when I was in high school and stuff like that. There'd have been no way I could have reached up there that high and twisted that and broke it over and put them in X's, perfect X's.
Yeah.
It's what they would do to that bamboo. And he was reaching up there like I told Icebox last night, about 8 feet in the air, and he'd twist it. You could tell he'd take his hand and twist it and then bend it over to him. It was a he or she, whatever it was. They'd reach over here and get the other one, twist it, bend it over. And they made about 4 perfect X's there. And they totally destroyed that bamboo patch. And I'm talking
Yeah.
about a bamboo patch that deer couldn't even walk through. I'm not joking.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about because there in North Carolina, it's been 2 or 3 years ago now. I went down and did an investigation down in North Carolina, about an hour from the Uwharrie National Forest. And from what I understand, that's probably where I'll be going later this fall. And the lady had bamboo all around the backside of her home, uh, and it was a tangle. It was you. I had to use the machete to cut my way through it to get through it, and that's where that female, she come out of a thick brush. It was right near the bamboo, and when I went through the bamboo, there was bamboo that was 13, 14 foot tall,
Oh
and
yeah.
these things were broken down at 10, 11, 12 feet, and they'd strip the leaves off from them, I guess, eating them or whatever. And yeah, it was a mess. They would get in there and knock stuff down. They would hide in it. They were actually using the bamboo to come up behind her house. And there was one big male that was a cream like collar, like a dirty blonde collar, dirty platinum blonde. And to this day, I say that he had some type of a physical connection with her, but never did anything about it.
Yeah.
She was a very pretty lady. Um, Another woman built like a brick outhouse. And yeah, I think that creature liked her for that reason and thought she was pretty, and he would protect her. And there was other Bigfoot in the area, and They were never allowed to run her house. He made sure they stayed away. He even tried to intimidate me by walking behind my truck while I was standing there, leaned in my truck, taking a 40 caliber off my hip, putting it in the back seat in the box. And I hear rocks and look up through the back window, and he's walking behind my truck. Stopped, turned around, looked at me, and stared at me for a little bit of time. And I stood out and I said, "If you want some, come get it, because it ain't gonna be fun." And the lady down there, she saw it and she looked at me and she said, "How can you stand that far away from them and not run?" I said, "Because if you run, you've lost." And it's just, you just got to stand up to them. And she just kind of looked at me and she said, "You're nuts." I said, "Well, I've been accused of that by my wife, and I pretty much trust her word." But that's things that I've done when I was younger, I won't do now. You know, and if somebody pushes me to do that aggressive call, I'll do it. But I'm going to go to my truck first, and I'm going to break out the artillery, and then I'll do the call.
Mm-hmm. Well, it don't go nowhere just yet. I want to see something.
Did you?
Oh,
I hate
Bear.
to break. I hate to break in. Did you show him those pictures I had of the handprint? Did you show him on the house where they made those prints?
Nope. Nope. That's what
Well,
I was just fixing.
send
No,
them to him. See what he think.
can you see this picture? I just put it back up here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Oh, Bear. What do you think that's print of?
That is a Bigfoot's hand, because if you
That's a
look
big
there on that
hand.
second panel, is the bottom side of where his palm is.
Yep.
And then you go up to the side, and then you can see a pinky and the ring finger, but it doesn't show the middle very good. Well, it does, but he just smacked the house. It's what it looks like he's done. Was that
Yeah.
right after a
Exactly.
smack?
Well, yes, sir. Yeah, it was a. They never did scare me. See, you told the perfect story there. They was using that bamboo patch to come right up to the back of
Mm-hmm.
my house because I could step out the back of my house on my side porch and go out to
Mm-hmm.
the back, and I wasn't even 5 yards from the bamboo. I was in the woods. Like I was like you, to walk through it, I had to have my machete.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean they'd slap the house, they'd pick on your window. I got one window. For him to be able to pick on that window, Hoss, I'm not joking you. And then the big side down there, and then the big creek over to the right. Man, he had to be at least 10 feet tall, 8, 9 feet tall, just to reach the bottom of that window.
Could have been a 12
Had to
footer.
be, because it could have been. I mean, he could have been taller than that, like I said. But you see that when I got a big light I put up there, and I'd have to go up a 20-foot step ladder, not a step ladder, but extension ladder to get up there and change my light. And I was still reaching up there with a 20-foot. I mean, it's high off the ground back there, but I mean, yeah, they slap the house, peck on the windows, peck on the doors. You never get nothing on the cameras, never see nothing anywhere. And I just laughed and go on. I never saw one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've never smelt one. But I don't know, they must have loved me. They just let me know when they come through there, I reckon, peck on the house and whatever they do, and then they'll just move on, and they'll be gone.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you married, or were you married at that time that you got that print?
No, no, no. I was by myself. I
No,
lived
you
there by
weren't. You
myself.
were living by yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
only other person that'd be there every now and then had been my aunt, and I was there 98% of the time. She might have been there 2%, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, if your wife had blonde hair or was a redhead, that was probably why they were pecking on the window, to get her to turn around or get her attention. And
Yeah,
it's usually when they do it, when it's just a man there, they do it because they're coming to see, what you're up to, check on you, make sure that you're not out somewhere around the house, and there's no confrontation. They don't want a confrontation with you. They don't
yeah,
want you to. They don't want anything, to bump it. them come around the corner of the front of the house and you run smack dab in the middle of their chest and your face is
Yeah,
imprinted in their stomach or in their lower ribs, and you're breathing in the hair and dirt and mud and everything else.
yeah,
So that's probably what they were doing, just come to see where you were at and get you to try to get you to do something to pay attention, get you to do something that was entertainment for them to see if they
yeah.
could intimidate or anything of that nature.
Like I said, I mean, I knew other people that it happened to, and I mean, like they'd never saw them either. They just had the same, knocks and stuff. But
Yeah.
icebox knocks. I've got a huge lake behind my house there, and then
Oh, that's
I've got a
perfect
huge,
for them.
yeah, I've got a huge creek. One of the hugest creeks in northwest Alabama goes right beside my house. I can spit off my deck into it there. I'm so close to it. And it's
Lucky you.
they must love
Yeah.
it. They must love it. They love it, I guess, down there at that creek because if that creek ever runs dry, then we're in trouble. That's the way I look at it. But it's
Yeah.
not going to, and they know that. And it's fresh water, and I've actually took a little scoop of it out with my hand. Also, it didn't taste that bad. I didn't drink a whole lot of it, but yeah, I'm sure that's what. And it's cold all the time, winter and summer, so they love it.
Well, their stomach, the composition in their stomach has to be different than ours because they drink water like that all the time, and you don't find where they get you know their poop turns into water, and they just it. The only thing I've ever found of that before is the pile that's like a number 9 dinner plate, and a 9-inch dinner plate, big around, and it might stand 5 or 6 inches tall, and it's always consistent. I mean, it's thick and hard. And, I've found that a few times in my life, and that's one of the. Everybody says, "Oh, that's a bear." No, it's not a bear. A bear don't do it that big. I've hunted bears in the state of West Virginia pretty much all my life, and I've never seen a bear leave something that size.
Well, he got the. If you got the second handprint ice box, if you still got it, you still got that
Yeah,
there.
yeah. If you'll give me a minute, I'll find it real quick.
I
Uh,
knew that's what it. I knew that's what it was. I mean, I didn't go around town telling everybody because everybody knows me, and I've been around there for a long time, all my life, and I'm not scared to stand up and say, yeah, that's what it is. Here's the proof. But I mean, sometimes I think if I was to shoot one and lay it out in the middle of the road here and tell everybody here they are, somebody they'd laugh at you and shit. You can't prove nothing to some people anymore. Not the way I look at
Well,
it.
that's the only problem that over the years, I've talked to scientists, I've talked to these guys that are college, professors, and they're like, the only way you're going to prove it to us, you bring your specimen in, a full body specimen, and we check it from one end to the other, then we'll believe.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
but the only problem with that is once you take it in, um, there's things in the government that don't want these things out there because that means a lot of tax dollars, a lot of money will not change hands from the private citizen, and the government would have to go bankrupt. And you'd lose all the hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, biking. You'd lose all the logging, the oil, gas, all that stuff would stop because there'd be somebody that would sue the government. We got to protect them.
yeah.
They're just cuddly creatures. And the person
Oh,
that would do that, I'd have to walk up to them and smack them in the mouth and say, "You ain't got a clue what that cuddly creature will do to you if he gets mad at you."
exactly. Yeah.
all right, here's your picture.
There's the other one. That looked like the left hand to me, but you look at it and see what you think. See, I may be looking at it backward.
No, you're not looking at it backwards. The way that it's on there, it's like it stuck its hand up there and it had mud on it and kind of drug it down some for the fingers. Because you
Yeah.
can
Uh,
see 4 fingers there, definitely. And it probably stuck its hand up there to smack the wall, and it leaned against it with the right and then smacked it with the left, because that's what it looks like. Like it moved its hand and it drawed its fingers further out. But that's a pretty big
Okay.
creature to reach up that high.
Oh yeah, they're big. He
I
had
don't
to be
think it's a
big.
10-footer. I'd say it's probably 11, 12 foot tall, because
Yeah,
they have them in
he's
North
got to
Carolina.
he's got to be a big boy to reach that back window, and that's a window he'd peck on because he knew I couldn't look out my bedroom windows and look and cut my eyes quick enough unless I raised the window, stuck my head out. By the time you
Yeah.
do that, they're gone. You know, they're
Oh
gone.
yeah, they just slink
Yeah,
off.
yeah, they're
You know,
gone.
they
And he
can
knew. Yeah, that's what it was.
even at a walking pace, they take a 4 to 6 foot stride, just
Oh yeah,
walking normal. If
yeah,
if they want to pick up speed and get out of there quick, it could be 6, 7, 8 foot strides, and it don't take long to get away from the side of a house or dive into the bamboo out back or into the woods or in that brush pile that's out there. It don't take them long to move. I've seen a big male that I watched for 5 years along with the rest of his clan. When I first started out, he had to be every bit of 800 pounds. He's 4.5, almost 5 foot across the chest, across his back. He was probably 2.5, 3 foot thick. And by the time the end of 5 years, he was already reaching that 4 foot thick, 4.5 foot thick through the chest. He was huge. He finished
huge,
growing.
huge.
And
Yeah.
whenever he wanted to run, um, I need an M1A1 if I ever go back out and sit down and watch one again. The speed that they move at is amazing. Um, 40 mile an hour through the woods. Ride a 4 wheeler or side by side through the woods at 40 mile an hour and see what you see. It's.
Oh,
I've done that when we're chasing bear hounds and stuff like that, and that's a little scary on a 4 wheeler or side by side. And
oh, yeah.
through the woods here, and it's pretty thick. And think of a Bigfoot that can run through and knock a tree over and keep right on rolling. It don't slow him down. It's their strength is amazing for the things that they can do, and the dexterity in their hands is amazing because even though they got calluses on their hands and on their fingers, they can do a lot of things. They can take the tops of trees and twist them and braid them together, and they can braid. I've had reports of them braiding the hair on a mane of a horse.
Yeah.
That's not a female that's going to do that. It's a male that's doing it. And there's other things that they do that's just simply amazing. And you're like, if I was that size, I don't think I could do that. But they do it every day.
They what was last question I wanted to, I've asked a lot of people this, and I've had a lot of different opinions, and I had one from a scientist. It's not a
Hmm.
man. Not a scientist that lives in Alabama. That's where I'm at. It's nobody that knows anybody in Alabama. Another man I knew. I asked him, where did their size come from? Where can we go back and trace back and find whatever they bred with or whatever it was way before we were ever here? Because we know they were here way before we ever were.
Well, not really.
And
They were here. The Bigfoot we have is not because of they were here before man. If they were here before man, how'd they get the human DNA inside of them? So the the thing that I talked about earlier about them, the fallen angels mating with the females after the flood, after the world started getting populated with humans and the animals, you know, they came after us. It's a corruption of creation. And they're an abomination because the simple reason is they were made through crossing of human DNA, animal DNA, and DNA that came from the fall. Um, and they were able, and everybody says, "Oh, angels can't mate." Yes, they can. It's been proven. There's strange DNA in a lot of different creatures that are out there, and it's corrupted their DNA. But the thing of it is, they came after humans, and because of deception that was portrayed on the human women, and with these fallen angels, and if you look at the Bible and the book of, you look in there where David's talked to King David, he was told he slew Goliath, and the description of Goliath is the description of most Bigfoot. The only thing is, once he killed Goliath and became king of Israel, he went and killed the four brothers of Goliath. And at that time, they were all cast out of society. Every human society cast them out. And once you put humans out there in the wild and they got long hair on them, what happens to a human? We grow beards. Our beards get real big and thick, mustache, all this. Your hair grows long. Their hair grew long and they became more feral, and they understood our language and they can understand our language. I mean, I've had accounts of people talking to them, and these things just walk away. And they've inferred the name of Jesus Christ, and
Yeah, they
they've
run.
said prayers and everything else, and these creatures walk away. And it's a tangled web because of all the things that they seem to know and understand about us, and it's scary.
Yeah,
And it's scary because we don't know everything about them. Everything that I know is not 1,000% the truth. It's what I've observed. I can't prove it to you through scientific testing and other stuff. If you take, but I can tell you this: I tried taking cameras out when I watched that clan for 5 years, and every time I take a
don't work.
camera with me, they knew it.
It don't work.
I don't know if they could
It don't
smell the
work.
chemicals or what, but you get a picture of them, it's a once in a lifetime thing to me. I've
Yeah,
gotten pictures of Bigfoot, and they're all Polaroids, and because of some jackass that scared the daylights out of my wife that I was married to at the time, um, I got mad, and I was going after this guy. I went after him, and if it wouldn't have been for two deputy sheriffs, he probably wouldn't have made it to his car. And that's a bad thing to say. And but sometimes my temper gets the best of me. But those deputies told me, said, just let it go. But I was mad all the way home. And when I got home, I took everything, threw it in a metal barrel, took lighter fluid, doused everything, made sure all the casts were busted. I had probably 10 or 12 different footprints. Some of them had weird looking toes on them. Some of them had, a metatarsal break, like they were standing on the front pad of their foot and their heel only, and had all kinds of that stuff and pictures of Bigfoot coming around a tree, because we used to go out, two of us go out, and we'd play a trick on them. One of us would walk, the other would stand, and if you got a Bigfoot that was fairly clear, you take a Polaroid of them.
yeah, yeah,
And but when I got around that family, if I took a camera, they knew it, and they never did come out of the cave. They would never come out. They know what a camera is. They know what a phone is. They know what a
yeah.
firearm is. They've been shot out for what? Since the English came here,
Over two
they've
hundred
been shot
years.
at
Yeah,
over 200 years in this country alone. The Indians
exactly.
shot at them
Yeah,
when they would do things to their tribes. If they weren't trading with them, and they did something to the tribe. They sent braves out with arrows and stick bows, and they'd go
Yeah.
out and shoot at them and whatever else. And then once firearms came into the picture, you know, you had muskets back then shooting a big old ball. You kill a Bigfoot with a big old musket or a muzzle
Oh yeah.
loader.
Yeah.
You know, they're 400 or 500 grain bullets. They're going to penetrate.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, they've been shot at for 200 plus years, 300 years from just, you know, the firearms, you know, muskets, muzzleloaders, whatever you want to call them. And, you know, they've learned over that amount of time that when a human's got a gun, it's not a safe thing to go around them unless you just want to see what you're doing, and they're pretty assured that they're not going to get shot.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then and I've got reports of Bigfoot that have walked up to men in a deer stand, and a self climber walked up and grabbed their foot, and they're sitting there with a blaze orange coat on and a big high powered rifle across their lap. You know, and the people
Oh,
look at you and go, "There's no way I could shoot that thing. If I hurt that thing, it would rip me apart." And it looked like a human. And
I
you know,
will. I'll tell this. I won't keep y'all long. I've done told this to Icebox. There was a gentleman that lives on the East Coast. I know him very well. He's
mhm,
a very, very wealthy man. I could have made an investment with him years ago, and I didn't do it. That's one of the one of the investments. That's one of the, it's a mistake I think about every day of my life. But anyway, that's nothing to talk about. But he was out west at another place hunting, and he saw one, and he said the same thing you said. That's what reminded me of that story. He said when he saw it, and he was the only one that saw it. He said it was an abomination,
mhm.
and he's never hunted again. He sold every gun he had, ever, never would again, never has would again, never contacted my other friend again. And buddy, when he saw one, that was the end of it. He wouldn't even talk to nobody about it. He just told him get me out of here and get me back home, and that's what they done, and that's the way it went. But he's never been in the woods again.
Well, I'll tell you this. The one of the last few reports that I've got here lately, two of these very prominent men that work here, right here in Charleston, West Virginia, they work for two major companies here in West Virginia. One of them works for a chemical plant, and the other one works for an electric plant. They're high up. They make, you know, $250,000 or more dollars a year. They went to Alaska last year and went up there and went fishing. And when they went fishing, they saw a Bigfoot take down a moose, broke its neck, grabbed it by the end of the nose and right there at its ears, and broke its neck. And they were sitting in a boat when this happened. And they had rocks thrown at them, not little rocks. I'm
Yeah,
talking
big
about
rock.
big river rocks,
Yeah.
you know, ones that weigh 100 pounds or more. And these guys hunted, they fished all over the world. They no longer do it. They quit because of this.
Oh yeah.
So I understand where they're at. The only reason I haven't quit is because I guess I'm crazy, according to my wife. And that's the only thing I can do. I've, you know, I still go out sometimes and still go out and do screams and hollers and go out and look for them. But I'm a lot more cautious now because my wife goes with me. Um, she carries firearm with her, and she knows if I turn around and look at her and tell her to go to the truck, she don't question. She goes to the truck. She has her own set of keys, and she will get climbing that 3/4 ton truck, fire it up, and she knows to drive away. Don't look back, floorboard it, get out of there. Do not stay there, and she knows that. And she don't want to because she wants to stay to help me. And I'm like, you can't do that. You your life means more to me than mine. And if I
Oh
have
yeah.
to deal with these things on a level of getting nasty, then I will. But I can't do it if I got to protect her. And so we don't go places where I've ever dealt with a nasty Bigfoot. And if they show any signs of being aggressive, we go back to the truck and go home. We leave. We don't take chances.
No, you don't take chances with an animal like that. Like I said, when they'd slap the side of my house, man, it would sound like it sounded like a stick of dynamite going off.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, but they'd never knock nothing off the wall. It's just such a funny thing. People just when you tell them that nothing ever shook on the walls, but all of a sudden it's just boom,
yeah.
and there it is. But if somebody asked me why didn't he knock something off the walls, I said, well, I don't I can't explain that to you, but that's just
It's
there's the evidence in the handprint. So I mean,
yeah.
you can take it however you want it.
Well, they do that to get a reaction. They do it just hard enough to make enough of a noise, and they cup their hand a certain way, and then when they smack it, that cupping the when they swing that cupped air, the air that's captured in their palm, is actually what makes the sound. The wall make that sound, and they
Yeah.
do it just hard enough to get a reaction.
Oh
If they
yeah,
wanted to come through your wall, they
they
just
could.
push the wall in and come
That's right.
through.
Yeah.
They've got all this strength, and they make us look like we're weaklings. Arnold Schwarzenegger ain't got nothing on a Bigfoot.
No, not on nothing like that. I mean, I always disagree with it. That they may be slapping the side of a tree. I mean, with their hand. I mean, that's one tough sob. I know that when he can slap that tree, when he can slap that tree with his fist. I mean, I always thought they made that popping sound with their mouth.
Well, I've seen them make sounds with their mouth, but they've never ever done. Every time I've ever seen one slap a tree, and in 5 years, I've seen it probably 20 or 30 times, and it was always the big alpha that done it,
Yeah.
the big male that was there, and he would just rear back and take that arm and cup his hand right before he hit it, and he would hit it with a closed fingers and his thumb tucked, and it would be like catching air, and he would smack that tree, and he would flatten his hand when it went against the tree,
Yeah.
and that's how they made it sound like it was a home run from Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth, or you
Oh yeah.
know, some people don't know who they are, but they were home run hitters back in the '60s and stuff in Major League Baseball. But that's how he done it, and I've seen the females do like a popping sound with their mouth, stick a couple of fingers, and pull their cheek out and then pop it. But it wasn't nothing like when that big male would hit a tree.
He's
All
tough.
right, my turn.
He's tough.
It's my turn. All right. We had a question earlier. Is there a difference between the male and the female footprints?
Yes. Your males tend to be wide at the toes, and wide at the heel. A female has a very slender heel. You won't see, it'll be less than half, a third, I would say a third of what the front of her foot is. If the front of her foot's 6 inches, the heel's only going to be 2 inches of, that's all you're going to get from the heel is a 2 inch area. Um, and if she's got a wide foot in the front, some of them do. Some of the females have, 7, 8 inches across. It's still going to be very slender at the heel because they don't do all the strength things that the males do. So they don't have that extra thick pad on their heel. They tend to walk on their toes more and on the front pad of their foot and hold their legs up. Why? I don't know. I can't tell you that. But the male will plant his whole foot for power, and they'll put their whole foot down and push off on the front for power.
All right. Question from me. Uh, What's the difference? I've heard of Bigfoot being slick, shiny, I almost say hair on them, and I've heard some be long, shaggy, and matted. What's the difference going on there?
Well, it's just their personal hygiene that they take care of. That clan that I saw, they would go to the creek twice a week and they would bathe. They would dip themselves into the deep hole that was down there where the creek met another creek, and they'd come back soaking wet, but their hair would be shiny. And then some of the ones that I've seen, they're matted, mud in it. It's just a personal hygiene thing that they just do that.
Okay. Hang on a second. I always try to fix this. There we go. All right. Now, what does
Oh,
uh I'm gonna put it like this.
boy.
Richard, I'm glad you come seeing us tonight, buddy. Finish watching the show if you can later on. Richard's my buddy. He if anybody don't know, that's Bigfoot Forest Giants Bigfoot Research. They're out of Florida. It's a great channel. I'll put it back up here after a while. But anyways, they're good people, and I love them to death. Me and Richard's got some broship going on. He's a good guy. He really is. What's the meaning behind the X's?
Yeah, they love it. Icebox, I'm gonna sign off here. It's good talking to you, and I appreciate you coming back anytime you want to. I'm sorry tied up tonight, but I was ball gaming and tuned another show for tomorrow night. But well, sometimes things fall through. But anyway, we appreciate you coming on. I love to hear your stories, and while you're out there, carry that big, stay safe, and carry your 454 with you, because I've always got mine with me.
Don't worry, I will.
Thank you, Waylon.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Later on, y'all have a good night.
All right.
All
See
right,
you, bud. Waylon's my guy.
X's, they put up X's to tell other Bigfoot not to come here, or any other creature. I've seen X's multiple times, and it's always a warning for those other creatures to not come through there. If you walk directly under the center of the X, you're going to get pushed out of the area. They will push you out. They don't like, they're setting up that signpost saying, this is my territory. My family lives here. It's the same as us putting a fence up. They don't have to put up but one, and it's a fence. It's an invisible fence to them. If it's just another clan and it's not family members, they'll respect it. They'll make a call and let them know that they're there, and the mail will go check them out, and they'll do, and they'll have their discussion. And but if it's up there, it's telling their clan, I don't want you going any further. Don't go any further. There's danger down here below this. We don't control that territory. You walk through there and you're on your own. If you get in trouble, yes, I'll come and save you if I can. And if I do, you're going to pay the price, because that big alpha says, no, don't do it. You better listen, because he is not afraid to knock another one of his clan members upside the head as hard as he can, and that's his job. He sets the rules, and if you don't follow them, you pay the consequences. But an X is a no-go zone for them. Don't go past it. Don't come across it. And if you're human and you walk under the middle of it, you're going to get escorted out of there shortly. It might be an hour or two, but they're going to know you walk through there, because he typically checks those X's. And if he smells human scent in the middle of it, he's going to find you and walk you out of there. He may just run you out.
So, okay, I might not ask this question. Matter of fact, I don't think I will. I'll just talk to you later. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a trick, not trick question. But anyways, I'll explain it to you here in just a little bit.
Okay.
Anyways, all right. Let's get on this one time, and then we'll get off here. We've been on here about almost 3 hours. Uh,
Hmm.
Dog man, you don't fool with them,
No, I don't.
but
Um,
you
I've
have seen
seen
them.
I've seen two dog men at 100 yards across an open field. There was no mistaking. I looked through a 4 by 12 by 50 millimeter scope, could see clearly everything about these creatures. They look like a proverbial freaking dog walking on two legs, and they do exist. And the third one I seen on that third week looked like the werewolf that you seen in Underworld. And I mean, that thing to me, it just made me feel like it was pure evil. And I don't mess with them. If somebody calls and says, I got a dog man here, you're talking to the wrong person. I'm a Bigfooter. I don't deal with dog men.
No, no.
It's called
Look,
self preservation. And I'm going to self preserve myself. I'm
I'm
not
like
doing it.
I'm like you, and there's a few things that you've said that I'm still not 100% sure on because I believe it's just theory. Um,
Hmm.
the origination of a Bigfoot, I don't know these things, uh, but I will say I do believe that they're animalistic.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, well, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Uh, where they come from, I'm gonna put it to you like this: God created this earth, me, you, and everything else in it. He knows why they're here and what they're doing. Um, but being the other kind of stuff, I don't read into the Bible as deeply as maybe
Mhm.
I should have. You know what I mean? I've read the
Yeah.
Bible, but I just don't put two and two together. Uh, who deal with it? Huh. I don't know anybody that would be private that would want to fool with them, Brian. To be honest with you, but anyways, that's the way I look at a Bigfoot, and I have said,
Mhm.
and I still stick by it. I do believe there's different species. You
Mhm.
have the Pacific Northwest; they're bigger, they're larger. Uh, they've got more to them. I'm gonna say there are different species in the Bigfoot in the South. Now, this is my opinion,
Yeah.
okay? There are some bigger ones. Most of the time, they're going to be cinnamon colored, autumn colored, like you talked about. And then you're going to have what I call your ordinary garden variety black Bigfoot that tend to be a little bit smaller, more clannish. That's just my theory. Then you got the skunk ape. The further north you go, the bigger they tend to get, as in deer and all that kind of stuff. It's just a
Mhm.
theory that I go with. You know what I'm saying? So to go with where they actually come from, the DNA stuff, I ain't smart enough for that, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm not, I paid attention in school and I kept an A average, but I never went to college and done that scientist stuff. And
No.
I never know nothing. I don't know enough about genetics and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I leave that to everybody else. And I've read the studies that they did on their DNA, and they couldn't tell us what the other half of DNA was. And it's conjecture from me because of what I've read through the Holy Bible and the other books
Mm.
that were written of the time, and they talked about these creatures and so on and so forth. And that's how it came to be in my mind, which it doesn't fit everybody else. And
Yeah.
it's until somebody brings one in, a scientist says, yes, this thing right here is half human and or a third human and a third ape and third fallen angel. Yeah, you're never going to be able to prove it. The only way to do that is bring a specimen in, and if you go out and kill one, a lot of them have those little GPS trackers on their ankles or stuff stuck underneath their skin, and you're just asking for a world of hurt. I mean, I'm not doing it. I
Oh
don't
no.
want to kill them. I'll kill them if I have to,
Right.
threaten my wife, my kids, or my grandchildren. Most assuredly, they're going to be in a world of hurt.
I was hoping you
Uh,
throw me in that group too, but anyways. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I
uh,
do.
yeah, I know what you mean. I'm just messing around. All right, brother, we're gonna get off here for tonight. Would
Okay.
you come back if I asked you?
Oh yeah, I'd come back anytime.
Well, there's an open invitation. You don't even need me to ask, okay? But yeah, we're gonna get off here. I'm gonna see what happens at the end of this game. But I'm gonna call you right after we get off the show and discuss a few things. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. But guys, we appreciate y'all coming tonight. You got anything else you want to hit on before we get off here?
No, no, I mean there's, you know,
Well,
I'm good.
okay. Well, I hope you had a good time.
I have. Yeah, it's been a real good time. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for coming. To be honest with you, thank you. I'm the one that's appreciated. All right, guys, we're gonna get out of here, and y'all come back. I don't know that we're gonna run a show tomorrow, but if we do, you'll get notice of it. We may have somebody come on. We may not. If not, I may just take a night off. Been a busy day. So y'all
Or you
come back.
can,
Huh?
or you can call me again. I'd come back if you need me.
Oh yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Yes, sir. All right, guys, we're out of here. I'm gonna call you here in just a few minutes. Don't you go nowhere.
I
I'll
won't.
I'll talk to you in, and guys, y'all come back and see us, and y'all have a good weekend. Okay.